Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.
Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. If you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. Today, I wanted to talk about caregiver response to aggression. As mom's mixed dementia progresses, I've had to continually adapt to changes in mood swings when I can't even understand what's causing them. And for me, the adaptation looks like a detective working on solving a case, only our case changes from day to day. Because FTD, or what is frontotemporal dementia, is more related to behavioral changes rather than just memory. It's hard to pinpoint what might be triggering a flare-up from one day to the next. Knowing is one thing, but living through the decline is still shocking to witness. You would think by now I would be used to some of this, or maybe even come to expect it. It still shocks me when I get the phone call that says, "We need to talk," like the principal for the child in the office. Because when I first stepped into caring for mom, I had limited time to balance my responsibilities. My patience was also limited, so understanding her actions or having better reactions on my part made daily care somewhat frustrating. Anticipating mom's reactions on shower days, for example, it created a bit of an emotional challenge, but eventually the aggressiveness and even language created situational depression for me. I knew not to take her verbal abuse personally, but not wanting to be there, it still made me feel guilty afterwards. I still compared what she had done for me from the beginning through my adult years and after to what I was needing to do for her, what I wanted to do for her at this point in time in her life. So aggression, as I say that, I'm wondering if you're actually picturing someone getting so angry, or the slap, the leave me alone, that kind of thing. But do you realize that aggression is also another defense mechanism? So have you ever caught yourself saying, "That's just how they are," or "They're doing it again," but actually follow up that thought with, "Why are they doing this again?" or what might be making them become more aggressive? I tried. For me, growing up with mom, she used to tease me on certain things that later became insecurities as an adult. Like, for example, she used to tease me on the way I smiled. So I didn't want to be in pictures. I didn't want to smile for any picture. It was always in the back of my mind. And those responses growing up and eventually later in life was, That's just how she is. But in time, we got to know that, yes, that's how she is. No, she's not going to change. That's her level of comfort. But at that point in time, year after year after year, especially during her time of decline, saying that's just how she is didn't cover the situation at that point. Because each situation began to be a little bit more different, a little bit more intense, sometimes even a little bit more shocking. For example, more recently, I received a phone call from one of Mom's caregivers. And the call, I hate to say it this, at this point, I am starting to get a little bit more used to it, because as the decline does take its toll, the frequency of aggression is happening more often. My first concern from this call was, oh no, what is happening? So I first get a call that says, Mom took a caregiver's phone and threw it down the hall. Okay. What happened to make this happen? And please tell me there's not a costly repair to replace the phone. Thankfully, the phone wasn't as damaged, but there was still the question of what happened. What caused this aggression in the first place? Got to put that detective hat on, get on the phone, and figure out the details. So what was happening earlier in her day before she got a hold of this phone and threw it? Well, first I hear she hit someone in the back of the head. Ugh. Again, what could have caused her? Because I know I can't say at this point, what in her right mind, or something of that scenario, because I know there is no such thing anymore at this point of what's right to her and what's right to me. She started to have, after she hit this person, she eventually started to settle down, and then sexual conversations started up. Well, she got frustrated when she was asked to stop the sexual conversation. Her needs, her wants, her preferences, you get the idea. It was upsetting the other residents, and she had been told several times before, that is not appropriate conversation. Let's save this for another time, another place, or just avoid it altogether. Well, she got frustrated, and so she decided she was going to leave the group, leave the living area, and go back to her room. And on the way back to her room, she discovered that her door had been locked. They pulled it closed just to keep other residents that might possibly be wandering the hallways out of everyone else's rooms. So she returned and asked for help to have her door unlocked and opened for her. As the caregiver is leaning into the door to unlock her room, Mom reaches for the back pocket, pulls her cell phone, grabs it, and throws it down the hallway. This is shocking to me because this is not Mom. It's never been Mom. So what's happening now and why? Especially because 2 days prior to this, when I was visiting, she was so lethargic and just could barely stay awake, trying to have conversation with her, trying to get her to engage at all. It was definitely a day that was, we'll just chalk it off to, it was an off day for her. So 2 days later, from being so tired and maybe a little bit of an upset belly to this pattern of aggression in one day. So my first thought was, after the caregiver explained all of these events, I asked, could you please put in an order to have her checked for a urinary tract infection? This is something that I've learned over the years, that when she has one, instead of being able to say, I'm having these uncomfortable things happening, whether it's issues with urinating, whether it's bellyache, bloating, or nausea, Instead of saying that she's experiencing these things, it comes out through behavior. On another occasion, Mom was in the cafeteria eating, sitting at a table by herself eating. Someone else across the room staring at her while she was eating. Instead of just looking the other way, or maybe perhaps waving, smiling, something to acknowledge the other person, she started to engage with the person in an angry, belligerent type of way. In fact, she began picking on this person until they started crying. When Mom was asked, "Why would you want to make them cry?" her response was, "Because I can." Sounds like a bully. But later she said it was because she was bored. Now this is something, ironically, Mom, the retired teacher, she recalls students with idle hands from boredom created bad distractions for the other students who were trying to actually diligently do their work. But this was something she indirectly taught me in the early years of caring for her, because sometimes boredom is because they don't understand how to do something. And I learned this when Mom said, if you give a child a task and they are bored, there's a disconnect in learning ability. I don't know why, but thankfully her words came back to me when she started to say more often that she was just bored. So when Mom began to get physically or verbally aggressive, she would claim that she was bored. I started to catch on to this and started to realize, what was she doing before the aggression kicked in? And when I asked more questions or just kind of paid a little bit closer attention to what she was doing, so maybe I didn't have to annoy her with more questions, she would say, "I don't know how to do this." And she would get frustrated. I tried to have her, I don't know, I think it was called Luminosity, computer programs for people with mental challenges to work on a computer program and to help their reaction time, to help their dexterity even with certain keys on the keyboard or using a mouse, try to help in certain ways. And she would get frustrated. And if I didn't take her away from it, she would have thrown the computer on the floor, thrown the laptop on the floor. So that was something that stood out to me and pointed me in another direction to pay closer attention to what was happening just before the aggression, what came about, and is this something that happens on a daily basis? Is she getting frustrated at the same time of day? I mean, it's one thing when they're frustrated with daily activities, getting dressed, brushing their teeth, toileting, stuff like that, eating. But if it's not related to those instances, then you have to put on your detective hat too and start digging into the details. Because keep in mind, majority of the time, aggression is a defensive mechanism. So, and it reminds me that defensive mechanism because when I did step into Mom's world as a caregiver, I was so angry for all kinds of reasons. My actions at first may have seemed aggressive to Mom because I was stepping in and I was taking over her life, all for her well-being and the better quality of life for her. And I'm sure she disagreed with a lot of it. But when I had the chance to reflect and look back on it, about 80% of my anger came from a place of fear. I was afraid of the unknown, the direction we were headed in. I was afraid of the fear of having to say goodbye before I was ready. So when our loved ones are facing moments of fear, it may be something that they're experiencing a loss of vision, loss of hearing, and not being able to see someone clearly, not being able to hear sounds around you until they feel like they're pounding around you, may put someone in that fight or flight mode, or create a stranger danger, someone who they've seen for several years and know, and all of a sudden they can't recognize them. Or it takes them a little bit more time to finally realize, oh, I know who that is, but they may not remember their name. It still creates a situation of maybe not exactly panic, but it still puts them in that fight or flight or stressful, aggressive response. And let me say before I throw out this one example, I'm in no way trying to compare mom, or any caregiver for that matter, to a dog. But dogs have dementia too. We had a dog that he was a German Shepherd Heeler mix that was the sweetest dog, very protective of his family and his yard, of course. But as he got older and his eyesight started to weaken because cataracts was starting to settle into his eyes, and even some loss of hearing, anyone who approached the door, people he knew, our friends and our family, he would aggressively charge the door because he could not see as clearly as he used to. And that cloudy, foggy vision of who someone might be, having to rely on scent, for example. And someone could come in that has a scent, for example, an adult may have a scent that ties back to a memory of, could be someone that bullied them in school, a memory that a horrible ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that maybe they wore this certain kind of cologne or perfume. And if they cannot see clearly, but they can smell something, they're relying on their limited senses to tell them it's okay. Otherwise, they're going to react first and hopefully calm down later. So I realized that with our pup who was losing vision and hearing, that it's not just something that we get used to. There's compensation and then there's overcompensation. So with mom, she has her moments of compensation, which is where sometimes the humor would come in. She would use the humor to cover up certain levels of limitations. But not always. There's other times that the aggression came out before any humor. So areas to be concerned about. Some of the causes of aggression are related or can be related to pain or illness, for example. Pain can be joint body pain from inactiveness. Your loved one might be sitting for many hours and they may have achy hips or an achy lower back. They may have dental pain just from poor oral hygiene. I know I got a little hangry a couple times when I had a root canal that had to be done. But before it was done and shortly thereafter not being able to eat, it made me a little grumpy. Maybe a little bit more than just a little grumpy. But if we don't know these things are present for them, if they're experiencing these things, then we have to be calm and slow to react to their aggression, obviously keeping them safe and protecting others around them, but not reacting in an aggressive manner ourselves. They may also have illnesses related to, like I had mentioned with mom, the urinary tract infection. Over the years, that was something that each one was different. Each one had a different response. The only difference was she was able to tell me versus later down the road, she wasn't able to tell me as quickly and she kept things to herself, or she didn't think to tell me, I'm having this discomfort. I think it might be another urinary tract infection. That's the stuff that I had to pay closer attention to. Is she eating normally? The claims for nausea more often. One of the little giveaways is that she would ask for the little orange pills, the urinary tract pain relief pills. And I knew at that point, she knows what those pills are. She's used them in the past. She wants that to relieve some pain. It's time to take her into the doctor's office and have her checked so that she can get the proper medication to clear the infection. That reaction to being nauseous or dizzy or uncomfortable from a UTI could also make them withdraw. And any feeling of being forced into reacting or interacting with people may cause them to be aggressive, and it may come across as that leave me alone, that angry leave me alone. Yes, you do have to learn areas of boundaries, when to really leave them alone and when to just hover and see what else might be causing that reaction. So your loved one may also be frustrated with limitations, as I mentioned with mom. They're unable to communicate verbally or effectively to express sadness, for example, instead of aggression. Other areas for aggression may be, like I mentioned, boredom, which is a big one for mom. There may be misinterpretation of sights or sounds. They may just be lonely. And I know that seems odd to be lonely but react in an aggressive way when you finally have a moment to connect. But it's a defensive mechanism. There may also be a range in temperature. It might be too hot or too cold. I know this area came at another shocking realization that trying to understand how much mom actually understands or can handle, but at the same time, knowing in my mind, okay, she says that she understands, but how much does she really understand? Let me give you a quick example. I wanted to get out of the house and I had to run some errands. So mom and I drive to the grocery store. I needed to run in, and it literally was a run in real quick, pick up 2, maybe 3 items. That was it. Mom refused to get out of the car. She just didn't want to walk. She had no problem being passenger while we drove around town, but she did not want to walk. So she said, leave me in the car, go grab what you need and come right back. I said no because it was going to be hot. Mind you, this was a springtime in Texas. Thankfully, not the heat of the summer. So I opened the sunroof and I said, I will be right back. Car is off, doors are locked, sunroof is open. She had her book to read and she said, if I get hot, I will come inside. Of course, that I knew she wasn't going to do. And that is something I also didn't want her to do. So I went against my better judgment. I rushed in the store, got what I needed, and within 15 minutes, I was back to the vehicle. And as I get back into the vehicle, she looked like someone threw a cup of water in her face. She was just drenched with sweat. I realized it did not matter the temperature. She was not going to move. And against my better judgment, her level of reasoning and understanding was clearly gone. Within minutes of me returning, she was very angry, annoyed. What took you so long? I'm hungry. I'm ready to go home. I'm tired of running. Totally different change of attitude. And it was only 15 minutes. I never did that again. And then I had another time on the flip end of that when mom was at home with me, relaxing, enjoying time under a cozy warm blanket because she was cold, having to keep track of how many hours pass before she gets up to use the restroom. I had to get to the point that sometimes I didn't tell the entire truth of making her get up to go pee. So I would have to encourage her to get up and come with me. I want to show you something. And of course, that was the leave me alone, leave me alone. And eventually I was like, no, come here, come here, come here. I've got something to show you. And so she would pull the blanket off. And as she's walking, I'm so cold, I'm so cold. I just didn't want to get up. When I finally had her walk around the hall just enough to point out, okay, now go to the restroom. She was so angry with me because I made her cold from getting out from under a blanket. And of course it was I don't need to. But once she gets into the bathroom, not only did she have to relieve her bladder, she had to relieve her bowels as well. She would tell you that was the power of suggestion. And then the aggression was a little bit less than what it had been before. But other areas there may be crowded areas that cause overstimulation from the lights or the sounds around. They're clearly not going to go attend a concert or do anything like that. But your living room, for example, or their living room where they're at, may be something that lights need to be adjusted. Sounds from loud TVs need to be adjusted. Maybe they're demanding something that they're not getting. And they may not be getting it for valid reasons, but they may still feel insignificant or ignored. Mom has asked for a TV in her room several times, and I have decided to wait on putting a TV in her room. I know full well that if I put a TV in her room, she will not be willing to leave her room or even her bed, because that's what she did when she was living alone. The TV stayed on 24/7. She barely slept. She maybe had a few short naps during the day, and her couch became her nest because she would not leave the TV. That's my understanding. That's my justification. I don't explain it to her in that way. But not getting what she's been asking for frustrates her, makes her angry. Having to share a TV with someone else, having to share a TV in the living room, and understand that it's not all about her, or it's not only her preference of what's on the TV at the time of the afternoon TV time. It's something that she has to deal with on a regular basis now. And sometimes she's angry with me because I don't give her what she wants. But there are reasons for it. I want her and I need her to interact with others and not isolate. That's only going to make her depression, or the tendency for depression, because if you recall in other videos, I've mentioned how mom is bipolar, manic depressive bipolar, and the interaction with others will help. Even though there might be situations like that phone call that created moments of aggression where might have been too much interaction, might have been the wrong kind of interaction. But working with the caregivers and pinpointing things and talking through things, trying to find out what's going on, what happened, why. Is this a new thing or is this a reoccurring thing? Made all of the difference. So there's some areas of possible interventions for aggressive behavior. Things I want you to try to keep in mind as you may be experiencing, or your loved one may be reacting in more of an aggressive manner than usual. The first thing you might want to do is create a behavior log. You can get a basic spiral notebook and maybe use a ruler or something to make columns, or write however you need to write. But jot down details of who, what, when, where, why, all of this stuff. What was happening at the point of time that the aggression took place? Help be that detective for them. decide, is this something that is the reoccurring moment? The time of day? Is it a meal? Is it the music? Is it a scent? Is it a type of clothing? Is it a spot in the house? Is it a visitor that delivers packages? Who knows? But writing that down and being able to see that on a regular basis, you'll maybe see a pattern, or it may just be something that takes a little bit more in-depth look. Watch out for cues on the stress and anxiety and the restlessness, because this may be an indication that it's like a slow ramp up of an outburst is about to happen. Try to simplify their daily tasks as much as possible. Maybe it's the task itself that's getting them frustrated, and that escalation throughout the day of these tasks creates a ramp up of aggression. Always approach your loved one slowly. I know sometimes the reaction to an unexpected behavior makes us rush in real quick, but we have to be calm and approach and try to have that question ready to go in that calm voice. What's happening? What's going on? Are you upset? What's upsetting you? If short-term memory is an issue, then introduce yourself repeatedly. I know for some that may be painful when you're looking at your spouse or your parent and they are slowly starting to forget you or not recognize you as quickly. But that repetitive introduction of who you are, like every morning, for example, they're going to go to bed. Hopefully they've had a good night's sleep. What happens to me what it feels like it is, I get another brain download. I reset the next morning, and either it's back to a routine that reminds me of where I pick up where I left off, or it's notes left, little reminders for myself. Those morning reminders of, hi Dad, it's me. You can name, it's your daughter, it's your son. Little things that make a difference. Provide a set routine even. Create predictable times for them to do everyday specific things. It may not be, brush your teeth sharply at 9 a.m., but the routine around about the same time every day helps to minimize those potentials for triggers, because they know they see a certain person, they know what they do with that certain person, they know when they do that task with that certain person. It creates the moments of familiarity. Play soothing music or favorite music. Unless you've discovered on your behavior log that certain music becomes a trigger for them. Use soft lighting. Try to avoid harsh bright light. Remove mirrors, for example. If they don't even recognize their own image in the mirror, remove them. Don't leave an opportunity for them to be thrown off. Provide them with comfort items. Do they have a favorite rocking chair by chance? Provide them with something similar to it. And I know at some stage, having dolls, they call it doll therapy. A doll or a teddy bear may be something that's soothing. Maybe if they're having a reaction, I need you to hold this. You dropped this, you forgot this, and you can hand them their teddy bear or their doll, something for them to grab onto and distract them with. Kind of like we get those stress balls, that is that helpful reminder to just kind of release and let go. Use opportunities of distraction, encouragement, or reassurance as often as possible, and keep it as flexible as possible, because some things might work and some things may not. Something may work today and not tomorrow. If they're being uncooperative, then it's a matter of removing them from others while distracting them with something entirely different. Worst case scenario, if you've discovered that this is a growing problem, it's not related to something specific in their environment that you can actually control, try to leave the psychotropic medication and even restraints as the last resort. One of the other questions I had for the caregiver when mom had her outburst was, it might be time for her medication to be adjusted if she's not experiencing a UTI. The other thing I have experienced with her over the years is as her weight changes and as time passes, it could be a year, maybe 2 years of being on a certain kind of medication. Our bodies adapt to it. And sometimes those medications are no longer effective. And so they may have to be increased. The dosage or the milligrams may have to be increased. And some medications can't because that's all that they're available in, or a higher dosage may be dangerous for your loved one living with dementia. But those are things to consider when aggression starts to happen more frequently. So when you recognize these violent, aggressive behaviors, keep these last few items in mind. Approach your loved one from the side. Avoid trying to come on straight on. You might be placing yourself right in the line of a smack. But if you can come from the side in a gentle, like I said earlier, hey, it looks like you're upset. What's bothering you? Then hopefully that side approach from one way or the other helps to reduce stranger danger or that fight or flight response for them. Speak calmly. Always speak calmly. Your loved one just might be stuck in a memory for all you know. And being able to just say, "Hi, Mom, it's Jessica. Are you about to teach 2 subjects today or 3? It might be enough to snap them out and think, wait, what do you mean? What's happening? Why? Oh, hi. No, I'm not doing that today. Why would I do that today? But they're now distracted. Use non-threatening body language with that calm voice. The same thing. Instead of reacting in an aggressive, which depending on the situation, sometimes it's hard to avoid. But if it's something in their environment and it's a behavior that's starting to happen more often, instead of, oh no, not again, don't do this again, you did this last time, stay calm. React in as neutral way as possible or as positive as possible. Make eye contact with them. You want that eye contact. And possibly, if you're able to approach close enough from one of those sides, gently stroke their hand to give them some calming reassurance. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. I know I saw them. They tried to take your food. Or I know I saw the pet and the pet was in your whatever. Just calmly try and relax. Diffuse. And the most important thing, something that I still remind myself as I approach these situations with mom, do not take this aggressive behavior personally. It is difficult to watch your loved one go through these changes. It is shocking to see this person exhibit behavior that you've never seen before. You don't understand. And you, quite honestly, don't like. They're not doing this stuff on purpose. They're not trying to hurt your feelings. They're not trying to be mean. Remind yourself, they are living with dementia. Or they have other challenges in life, limited abilities. Aggression is a defense mechanism. Determine what's causing the aggression, and you will determine how to diffuse situations. hope this gave you more food for thought. Thanks for listening in today. And until next time, be proactive, everybody. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalazelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.
If you run a small business, you need the most from every investment. That's why Comcast Business gives you more, like our new gig speed Wi-Fi, plus unlimited data, all on the largest, fastest, reliable network for small businesses. Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Don't miss our special holiday offer and ask how to get up to a $750 prepaid card with a qualifying bundle. Call today. Ends 12/4/2022. Restrictions apply. Requires Gigabit Extra Bundle with 2-year agreement.